Good afternoon.
Yeah, you good? Situated?
I guess.
All
Can you
right.
hear me?
Go ahead and raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to provide is true and accurate?
I do.
Thank you, Mr. Jody. Oh, Mike.
Thank you. Please state your name.
George Cummins.
And Mr. Cummins, are you a landowner in Floyd County?
I am, and also my sister and I own a farm in Hardin County, which is not directly affected, but has both Navigator and Summit in the area. And they both cross the rural utility line, water line that serves our property. And we're at the base of the drainage district, which is crossed many times by the pipeline and will have some effect.
And for the parcel in Floyd County, that's a parcel that's being targeted by Summit for their hazardous pipeline, is that right?
Correct.
And sir, you've caused to be filed several exhibits and attachments to pre-filed testimony and also a couple hearing exhibits, is that correct?
That's correct.
And if we were to walk through all of the questions asked in your pre-filed written testimony, other than maybe some clerical corrections, would your responses today be substantially similar to what you've previously provided?
They'd be very similar, but in the 2 months since we put in the pre-testimony, there's been some things I've added, and I've got up to 70 attachments, and I don't know how many of those have gotten into the record. You've added some, and also in my testimony, you have added the Exhibit LO that was submitted to the Utilities Board on August 10th, and I'd like to have that, be referring to that during my testimony. And I have copies of things that have not maybe made the record, which we might want to include.
Okay, so why don't we get, or at least offer into evidence what has been included, sir? And so I would first offer the Cummins exhibits, landowner exhibits 185 to 215. And that would be Mr. Cummins' pre-filed testimony through attachment 52.
Is there objection?
No objection to the pre-filed testimony in attachments 1 through 52.
With no objection, the board will admit and give the way.
And I've got attachments of copies.
Hold on, Mr. Cummins. We'll get you through it.
And then, Mr. Cummins, you also caused to be filed Exhibit 300 and 606, and those are hearing exhibits that you would also like to be admitted and considered by the board. Is that right?
Correct. Well, I'm not sure what all is in it, but
okay. Well, I can tell you that you provided those to us, and we got those filed for you. So, all right, we'll go ahead and offer Exhibit 300 and Exhibit 606.
Did you get in the Hardin County permit restrictions and the Sioux Green utility line approval?
Let's do this. Let's go ahead and get through this
Okay.
offer.
This may take more than 3 minutes.
So I would offer again 300 and 606.
Are there objections, sir?
No objection to those two exhibits.
Okay. With no objection, the board will admit, give it the way to.
All right, thank you. Now, sir, I believe what you're referencing has been uploaded in 606, but if we get to that and something's missing and you have something that you think you need to have marked as a hearing exhibit, just let us all know, okay?
Thank you.
Okay. All right, with that, I would tender Mr. Cummins for cross-examination.
Okay. Mr. Taylor?
Thank you. Mr. Cummins, I'm Wally Taylor. I represent the Sierra Club. When did you first become aware of the Summit project?
I received a letter dated August 26th of 2021 about the informational meetings, a public meeting, which was held September 20th in Floyd County. I was unable to attend that meeting. I got a letter the 11th, November 5th, regarding a survey notice. It was, I've never signed for anything, but it had a phone number and so on, which I called. It was a Texas number, and I offered to, meet the survey crews, bring my tile maps, soil maps, utility lines, CRP, yada yada, and so on. On December 10th, I received a personal letter from Governor Terry Branstad, and I'd like to read it. I strongly support Summit
Objection, Your Honor.
State your objection.
This letter is in the record several times. The board is aware of it. I'm also going to object on the basis that the question was, when is the first time you heard from Summit? That was answered in the first couple of sentences. This witness has a 15-page chronology of his contacts with Summit as the first 15 pages of hearing exhibit 606, which is already in evidence.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Taylor?
Thank you.
I can understand why you would object to that letter.
So, what have you told Summit's agents?
Well, as the chronologies, I've met with him many, many times. I have a land agent from Minnesota, very nice young man. He's very persistent. And I have asked him an awful, well, I got, my first meeting with him was December 11th. He came to my house and he brought along a copy of their proposal, the easement proposal, and said it was 115% of the appraised land value, and so on, and it would also include 3 years of reduced crop production, and he gave me a copy of the easement agreement. And I reviewed it, and I have a whole list of questions about that easement offer which remain unanswered. And the only things in the previous contacts I've had with him for 2 years have been to increase the easement offer. And when I received the last easement offer, which was substantial, I said, I'm not a prostitute. I'm not for sale. And I do not want to sign an agreement which, for money that I don't agree with. And I've got all kinds of questions that, well, I could share those with you too.
Did you ever talk with or any land agent about changing the route of the pipeline?
Never.
Did they refuse to talk about that, or what?
Well, we just never got around to that, but in the last, well, just a second to give you the dates. On July 22nd, my wife and I, co-owners, both got a certified letter and a regular mail letter with the hearing notices on IUB. It had a copy of an easement agreement, and it had copies of the maps of where the thing was located. And 4 days later, we got 2 more letters each, and they had changed the route.
Okay. Can we bring the KMZ file up? Does this look like your property?
That's our property, and that is the map as of July 26th.
This is the map that you got in July.
In July 26th, but July 22nd is a different map.
Oh.
And that's the one we talked about for, 18 months, whatever.
Where did the previous route go?
It was, I think we've got, is that Exhibit B? Brian, do you remember? I've got a picture of it here.
Well, maybe if you could take the pointer and just kind of run along the map there of where it would be.
Do you have a previous map like this?
Not that I know of.
This is the only one in the record?
It might be attachment number 1 in your pre-filed testimony, if you have that.
Okay. Well, is it, you said I only had the 56, Brian?
If I can just speed this along, it's page 63 of Mr. Cummins' pre-filed testimony.
Can you pull that up? There we go. This is the easement that we've talked about for months. And it starts at the what am I doing wrong? There we go. This is my field driveway. This is a garden shed, and I've got 6 heritage apple trees and 2 apricot trees in my garden right here.
For the record, that's in the far northwest corner of your property, correct?
Yes, correct. And it runs diagonally to the north or southeast corner, and there's a utility line that's abandoned. I think it's a telephone line that runs right along 210th Street. And if I can do this without shining in there's a CRP strip right in here.
Mr. Cummins, it's hard to hear you when you pull away from the microphone.
Okay. There's a CRP strip that runs right here.
And that's toward the southeast corner.
Yes. And I've shared that with my land agent and with a representative from SG Inspections that I met with. And it's never been talked about, never included in the official records. Also, I had to pay to put in the field entrance. We originally bought 40 acres in 1988 when my kids were growing up, and I wanted to have them see something born and something die and raise some livestock and have some work ethic and that sort of thing, do some dirty jobs till they're done. And then in 210, the kids were gone, and so my wife and I sold the homestead and the pasture, and we kept the 32 acres.
Okay, so do you know what happened to this? The previous route? I mean, why was it changed?
I have no idea. Well, could we pull up, I had it as, Brian, 722, page 8. And I think, didn't you send that to me as pre-trial? Because in the official map that was in, well, I guess I got it right in here, probably. Just like the previous speaker, the first page for estate holders, it had my wife and I. it had my neighbor, Rod and Amy Frost, and it had the Cedar River Railroad Company as easement holders.
And for the record, is that what we've called the Exhibit H notice?
I can't tell you what they called it.
Okay. But that came in July?
It came July 22nd, and I had as mine, it was the attachments to my testimony 55, 56, and 57. And Brian, you sent those to me in some of our correspondence. But this is the survey map, and it's stamped by the professional land surveyor. And then in the overview, it shows the Cedar River Railroad Company running through the corner of my property.
Is that
Right
wrong?
It does. That's inaccurate. That's a mistake. I figured that's why they, when I complained about it, then they sent, 4 more copies 4 days later with what you just showed me initially, with the route change to the east.
Okay. So let's go back to the KMZ file then.
Okay.
All right. So this is what they sent you later.
This is the July 26th arrangement.
Okay.
And what they basically did, it exits the same place in the southeast corner, and then they moved the route farther east away from my garden and orchard and avoided all that, my perennials.
Is that something you would ask them to do?
No. I just said I ain't going to sign.
Yeah. Is there any CRP land for
Yes, it's still right in here.
So along the east edge?
Yes.
Okay.
And basically what it is, it's a waterway, and it kept eroding, and so I just put it in CRP.
Okay. Now it looks like there are some structures both north of the northeast corner of your property and just to the east of the northeast corner of your property. What are those?
Okay, this is the Sandy Sawney residence.
That's the one just east of your property, right?
Yeah, just east of my property. And this is Steve Michaels. Steve has signed. And this is a cattle pasture. And they will, of course, bore under the road, my property, into his. And it crosses Underwood Avenue. And so when it was right here in the northwest corner, this area in here is a bog. There's always water in it, except this year. And to bore under, you'd have to dig a 20-foot hole or whatever to bore, and it'd be filled with water. And it would be very difficult for construction. And when I found out that they had shifted to the east, I asked Steve if he knew anything about it. Well, no, he had not been contacted.
Steve is the neighbor?
He's the neighbor to the north. And he has signed. And, obviously they would have increased the direction or amount of it. And he found out after he signed they wanted to put a shutoff valve on his property, just outside of Charles City. And from attending some of these meetings, the shutoff valves are above ground. And we've got pictures of above ground plumes from a rupture. And that concerns me, as well as the equipment had ethanol plants to capture, store, and pressurize. It'll be above ground. And any sort of rupture would be disastrous. And I believe in the Peter Principle. If anything can go wrong, it will at the most inopportune time.
If there were a rupture of this pipeline in the current route as it is on the KMZ map, what would be the closest emergency response personnel?
Well, the Charles City, which is probably 2 miles to the hospital, and there was concern about funding the fire department in Charles City and emergency services. And there's a bond issue coming up in November about funding emergency services. The fire department did have 4 permanent employees, now they have 2. And depending on volunteers, basically, there's always a full-time at the fire station, and they generally get a call and they take the equipment out and the volunteers meet them. And more of the volunteers are busy and working, and their response time is limited. But that's the least of the problems here, because this pipeline, as Tim Fox testified here, it goes through the city limits and through the Avenue of Saints development site and the Southwest development site. Basically, the reason, the pipeline has basically followed a gas pipeline through Floyd County. And when it gets through the Avenue of the Saints site, it goes left across the Cedar River into private property.
Objection, Your Honor.
State the objection.
I'm going to move to strike as non-responsive. The question was, where's the nearest emergency medical personnel? We're now talking about the pipeline route across a completely separate set of parcels.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Taylor?
I'll ask another question.
Thank you, sir.
Do you farm the land or do you have a tenant?
I have a tenant, long-term tenant.
Has he expressed any concerns about the farming?
He has 2 other landowners who are also affected by Summit. And he said, I'm the easiest to work with. He's got one out-of-state landowner who used his payment to buy out his sister. And when he talked about the last rental arrangement, he said, it's my land, why would I share it? And the other landowner is a retired banker, and he's got 2 daughters who live out of state. And said, when we're gone, just going to sell it, so I take the money now.
So that's all the questions I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Ryan?
Thank you. Good afternoon, Mr. Cummins.
Good afternoon.
So, first off, I am curious. I noticed that you said in your testimony you lived in Swaziland for a few years. So I can't help but wondering if there's some significance to the shirt that you're wearing today.
Well, I was a Peace Corps volunteer in Tanzania for 3 years, and then taught in Swaziland as a contractor. And I've done volunteer work in South Africa, Malawi, Kenya twice, and Brazil. And in 2010, Mr. Rastetter was involved in a project in Africa called Agrisol, and it was going to displace lots of immigrants, refugees who'd been there for 4 years. He had a deal with the country. He was going to rent land for 25 cents an acre, and he had been appointed to the Board of Regents by Governor Branstad, and he wrote Iowa State Extension into the project development. And a friend of mine, I still have contacts in Tanzania, alerted me to that, and I raised questions about it with Wendy Winterstein, the president, and so on, and she got it stopped. And
Was that the president of Iowa State?
yes,
Okay, thank you. Just
and
clarifying.
the friend of mine in Tanzania sent me this shirt as a gift, thanking me for my support of that effort.
Thank you. When
Yeah.
you're,
I was going to say, I included that, I wrote this up for a Peace Corps reunion several years later to let them know, because some of them are still involved. And let's see, where have I got it here? I had it as my attachment 34, and I don't know, Brian, it's in here somewhere in the official record. And also 35 was a Ames Tribune article censoring Bruce Rasteller.
When we were looking at the map of your property, it looked like there's maybe some residential development to the west of your property. Is that recent?
It was there, it's been there quite a while. It's still being developed. Can we get the map back up?
So we typically wait for the attorneys to call those up, so I'm happy to do that. If Ms.
Yeah,
Ryan would like me
I
to.
think it would be helpful,
Go ahead.
thank you.
Go ahead.
Can we expand those out a little bit? How about a little further? There we go. Okay, this is, what am I doing wrong here? There we go. Okay, here's our property. This is a development in here that's been there since since 1988. And at one time they were wanting to buy this section of my property for further development. And the pipeline is going to, well, you can see where it goes. This is through the area development site and that sort of thing, and across the highway and across the river, Cedar River. This is all private property, and I think the route got changed here. This was just recently sold to the owner of McDonald's Restaurants, and he's building a huge house up in here, and he wanted to use this as development. And with a pipeline going through here, Chuck Thorson lives right here, and he has been at several of the public meetings complaining about the proximity to his house. Also, there is Frederick Repair right here, and you can see how this jogs here. And the reason was it initially was going across into Racine's ground, and they objected, and so they rerouted it here.
And I'm going to guess that were that development to continue and there be additional, residential development out there, that would impact the value of your property?
Oh, absolutely. Well, I think the other thing here is this is a golf course, and it jogs back here. It hooks up with the pipeline again, as I was trying to make the point before. And obviously, they didn't want to run through the pipeline or the golf course and that sort of thing.
Okay. So if the pipeline did impact the additional residential development in that area, it could also then impact your land value.
Well, yes. I've spent 19 years as a certified crop specialist, and I'm a certified crop advisor, and I can document pipelines, whether they're gas or electric or whatever, cause permanent reduction in productivity and farmability, drainage and that sort of thing, rental, resale, and assessed valuation. I can document it. And that's what's going to happen to my property.
I'm also curious, did you include a tile map with your testimony?
Yes.
Could we just take a quick look at that? Do you know what exhibit number that is?
It was my, let's see, my 46, 47, and 48. I don't know if we can pull those up. I don't know what they are for the IUB numbers. March 17th, we were all out of the field because it was way too wet. I got a message from my land agent, and he knew I was concerned about tile and that sort of thing. We spent a lot of money on tile drainage. And he said, would you like to meet with one of our contractors? And I said, that'd be great. And two of the Summit land agents and my tenant and two neighbors and I, we met with Isaac Rissau, Risseuw, and he was in the testimony earlier here. He's a construction manager from Texas. He works for the inspection service that has been hired from by Summit. He's never worked in Iowa, but he has considerable pipeline construction experience. He's currently living in Ames and meeting with landowners like myself. He had a notebook with all maps along the route, including my neighbors and they were aerial photographs. And he misinterpreted my apple trees as hay bales. And I showed him the tile maps, I had a packet of tile maps and soil maps, and we are in an area of glacial soils, stone lines, side hill seeps, karst geology, shallow soils over fractured limestone, sinkholes. In Floyd County, we have disappearing streams. There's more water upstream than there is downstream. Why? Because of the limestone fracturing. It's shallow, and how are you going to bore under the river, the creek? And I had this packet of information for him, and I had the permit for my driveway. I had the map of the CRP in this packet, thinking that would be of interest. He left it on the table when he left. But these are the maps. There's three sets of them. This is the latest. The original owner had put maps in. Let's see. I don't have the date, but I should too. He started in
Objection, Your Honor.
1956.
That's your objection.
I want to object to the narrative response as non-responsive. I believe Ms. Ryan asked him if he inserted tile maps in his attachments, and he's been answering that question for quite some time now.
Okay.
I can ask something specific.
I think we got the answer to your question, Ms. Ryan, so yeah, go ahead.
Just a quick follow-up. So that image that we're looking at there, is every line that we see is a tile line?
What it's starting to say is the original owner started with clay tile in 57. He added some more in 68. And then this area right in here, in 72, they put in 80-foot spacings. And in 2014, I put in 40-foot spacings. And 60 to 80 is very common, and in these soils, 40 makes the difference.
Okay. So it's a lot of tile, and it's a variety of different types of tile.
And you think, okay, we're going to cross diagonally all of those tile, and whether you do it here or do it here, it makes no difference. It's going to affect the farmability, the drainage. The drainage is never going to be the same. And also, I've talked to some local tile contractors, and they say they're not going to repair any tile around a carbon pipeline because of the liability issue.
Okay. Earlier, when you were answering questions from Mr. Taylor, you said you had some unanswered questions that you had submitted to Summit and never gotten a response to.
Correct.
What were those questions?
Objection, Your Honor.
State the objection.
This witness has prepared as part of his hearing exhibit a lengthy 4-page list, single-spaced, of questions for Summit. It's already in the record. He doesn't need to testify again to what his questions are.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Ryan.
Can you simply direct me to that?
I have
Hold on, Mr. Cummins.
attachment
Hold on,
25.
Mr. Cummins. Mr. Cummins. Not you yet. I think her question was directed to Mr. Leonard. I think.
I understand that it was, Your Honor, I'm just looking for it.
Okay, just double, I was actually checking with Ms. Ryan, so.
Yeah,
just give
whoever
us-
can direct me to it, I just want to make sure that that's what I was asking about, and then I can move on.
No, no worries. We'll get on the same page here.
It's attachment number 26 to the pre-filed testimony.
Give Ms. Ryan a second here.
All right, yeah.
Can you pull that up?
Just about there.
No worries.
In my, attachment 26 is pipeline questions.
Hold on, Mr. Cummins.
Um,
I want to make sure Ms. Ryan has a chance to look at it. She might want it pulled up. She might not want it pulled up, but it's her line of questioning, so we really need to let
I just want
her.
to make sure you can pull up the right one.
Yep, we need to let her navigate her line of questioning. Thank you, though.
Here we go. I guess I would just have a clarification question for Mr. Cummins about these. Are the questions in attachment 26 the questions that you submitted related to your easement?
What's number one?
What equipment will be installed at each ethanol plant?
That's my attachment 26.
Yeah.
Well,
Are those the unanswered
no,
questions?
no.
No.
It's the previous, the one, I had it, my summit agreement questions, I have it as attachment 25. And the pipeline questions are for the ethanol plants and their location and their contracts and that type of thing.
Okay, I've got it. That's a very helpful explanation. Thank you.
The first is landowner grants, sells, and conveys under the company for the use of the company, its agents, employees, and yada yada, so on.
Okay,
Easement, abandoned is in it 3 times.
so the exhibit 20, your attachment 25 is that list of unanswered questions?
Correct.
All right, thank you very much. I have one, I think just one last question for you, and that's that I've seen you here a lot. How many days have you come thinking you're scheduled to testify?
I've been here 3 weeks.
So you've been attending the entire,
Well,
every day?
you ask how much time I've spent with this in 2 years. Read the chronology. And I've attended supervisor meetings, IUB meetings, hearings. I've attended meetings with legislators in their public meetings. Of course, the public meetings and that sort of thing in 3 counties. We have both Navigator and Summit in the counties that I have served. And it's interesting to comment about, getting a lawyer about abandonment of my wife and stuff. We go out for socials and my wife warns a couple, for God's sake, don't bring up pipelines. Talk about something else, politics maybe, or the economy.
Great. That's all I have, thank you.
Ms. Colas?
Good afternoon, Mr. Cummins. You answered most of my questions,
Good.
but I do have a question. You said you were concerned about the erodible land intersecting the pipeline in the southeast corner. Can you please bring up the KFZ map and explain that to me?
That's just where the CRP is. And the CRP controls that erosion. Might also mention that my tenant, because of rocks and stuff like that, we've been practicing reduced tillage, minimum tillage, that sort of thing. When the survey teams came out,
Objection. State the objection.
I'm objecting to the narrative response is non-responsive. The question was to have him explain the CRP, which he did.
Thank you. Ms. Colas?
Concerning the pattern tile, did you have any indication of how deep they might be drilling that pipeline?
they gave me someone gave me an ag mitigation plan, and it talks about all kinds of things. But in their easement, they say something about trying to return the surface to the original state. Try.
Are you concerned about the safety of the people living around that pipeline?
Objection, Your Honor.
State the objection.
Asked and answered. The direct testimony here talks extensively about safety. He also talked about the development to the, I suppose, west of his property and its impact on those folks.
Ms. Colas?
I guess that's all the questions. I guess you've already covered it. No more further questions. Thank you.
Ms. Hike?
Mr. Cummins,
Yes.
I'm Chris Hike, I'm a landowner. Did Summit provide you with any paperwork discussing any warnings, risks, or safety information regarding to putting this pipeline on your property?
No. It has been a subject of the public meetings that I've attended, and as you're well aware, that sort of thing has been raised.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. With no further questions, Mr. Jordy for redirect.
All right. Just focused on the Summit proposed pipeline only and not the time spent on Navigator. Would you say you have over 1,000 hours of your time invested in trying to educate yourself about this project?
Yeah, well, yes. And I've got boxes of articles that relate, and as you can tell, I'm not very well organized. But yes.
And for all of that time, Summit hasn't offered to compensate you for that economic loss, have they?
No, other than just raise my easement offer.
Okay. But do you think raising your offer from an artificially low starting point is justification for all the time you've spent and not been compensated?
My big thing is, they've made a very, very generous offer. I could even show it to you. But I would have to accept their if they grant eminent domain and the compensation board assigns a fair market value to my property, I get the money, probably less than they've offered, but the contract terms stay the same, which are unacceptable.
So I just want to make sure we're on the same page. If they made you a generous offer, why wouldn't you just take it already and be done with this?
Objection, Your Honor.
State the objection.
It's outside the scope of the very limited cross of Mr. Taylor and the other questioners. This line of questioning, going to why he doesn't want to sign an easement, is the primary topic of his written testimony, and it was not called into question by any of the other questioners.
Well, I disagree with that. He brought it up. I don't remember who was asking questions, but he brought up their easement offers in his prior, I think it was, with Mr. Taylor. So that's already been out there.
What's being rehabilitated that he said in response to Ms. Taylor's question?
Well,
I guess I would answer that.
hold on, just hold
Mr.
on a
Cummins.
second.
Hold on, I gotta let the lawyers sort out whether or not this is appropriate cause and
let me ask-
rehabilitation.
Let me ask it a different way. In your last answer, you said Summit made you a very generous offer, which sounds like to me, what's the problem here? Just sign it and be done with it. So my question is, when you're saying they made you a generous offer, is that taking into account the easement terms, the actual language? Or are you just looking at money divorced from the terms? What did that mean? Because if you don't clarify that, it seems like this is great for George Collins.
Objection.
Now, go ahead, sorry.
Now my objection is asked and answered. He just explained that even if he went through eminent domain, the contract terms, in his opinion, would be the same, and that was his problem.
Well, I didn't think it was that clear.
Well, that whole list of,
Hold on, Mr. Cummins. They just take the fun out of this, don't they? Mr. Jody, why don't you ask a different question or reword, please?
Yeah, I just want to be clear because we're taking a record and all that's going to be left is black and white words, not how you say things. And so, do you or do you not think the offer Summit has made, offer meaning money and terms, they're not separable? Is that offer suitable to you, yes or no?
no,
Okay, all right. I just want to be clear on that. Now, you had talked about, I think, an Exhibit H filing that was sent to you, and I don't know if there was an error or something in it, but if we can just look at Exhibit 300, please. Now, earlier on, I think you referenced this. I just wanted to be clear. Do you believe there was some type of an error or inconsistency with either the ownership or the tenants? And you might want to scroll down, please.
and scroll down. Again, Rod Frost is my neighbor, and the Cedar River Railroad does not run through my property. And this was in the July 22nd, certified in regular mail.
Okay. And then you referenced a series of attachments, and just for your edification, you have attachments in Exhibit 606, so they weren't forgotten. I just wanted to let you know that.
Okay.
And could we pull up the KMZ, please? And if you could zoom out for a second, a little bit. Yeah, just a little bit more. Just, I want to see if we can. Okay, all right. So, were you here for the testimony relative to the Charles City development piece of ground that you can see on the far left-hand side of the KMZ?
That Tim Fox and I've attended their meetings too.
Okay.
I helped him prepare his statement.
Now, my question to you is, have you, in all your conversations with Summit and going to meetings, have you ever received an explanation why Summit isn't either several miles north of Charles City or several miles south to avoid all of these angles and weaving and bobbing here?
At the hearing here, they asked if they could relocate, and they said because they didn't want to cross the Avenue of the Saints. But they crossed the Avenue of the Saints just to the west to come across here.
Okay, and my specific question was, has anyone talked to you? I mean, this route, frankly, to me doesn't look very intelligent for a lot of reasons, but has anyone talked to you about why they aren't avoiding this area either by going further to the north or the south?
No.
All right. And then if we can zoom in on Mr. Cummins' particular parcel, please. There we go, right there. Now, would you agree that your particular land looks like it might be more suitable for growing houses than growing corn over time?
There have been some opportunities for that, yes.
Okay. And would you also agree that coming to the north of you and then dropping down at a right angle and then crisscrossing your ground that's very near housing developments is not an intelligent route.
Yeah, I probably agree. I might mention, I had an offer once to buy this from the developer here. And I said, I had plans to build a confinement hog building right there. And that stopped it.
Okay. And I'm not suggesting, sir, that you should sell to a developer, but if you go through eminent domain, there'll be the highest and best use analysis. And would you agree with me that it looks like the way the town's moving is that residential would be most suited for your land?
Objection.
State the objection.
Relevance. The board has no role in determining highest and best use or the value arising out of that decision. That's handled by a compensation commission.
That part's true. What the board does have a role in is not placing the pipeline in an absolute idiotic location, such as would be here based on the obvious development. And I'm just establishing that fact with Mr. Cummins.
In response to what cross-examination? This is just further direct. It's Mr. Jordy making a statement and asking Mr. Cummins if he agrees with him.
He was asked about his land, the route across his land in cross-examination, and that's what I am clarifying. So I can tell it's a sensitive subject for Summit, but it was brought up in cross-examination.
Hold on.
You know, to answer your question of why.
Mr. Cummins.
Hold on a second.
Hold on. Okay, we covered a lot. You can ask specifically about the development, but not the money.
Okay.
Could I answer it that way?
No.
We're gonna let you, we have to let your attorney lead it. Thank you though, appreciate it.
So, sir, again, without getting into valuations of your land and regardless of how you want to use it right now, I'm simply wanting to know if you agree with me that the logical and natural course of the orderly development of your property is almost certainly a residential development. Would you agree?
Probably yes, but I guess I look at it, I want to leave the land better than I found it. I believe I inherited it from future generations. And I think it's a God-given gift that we need to protect.
And that's obviously you're right. In terms of the board's decision-making, I'm simply trying to establish with you that would you agree that if this is most likely going to be developed into residences in the future, if a pipeline was there, that wouldn't be possible for you to do?
Correct.
Okay, and that would cause you or your heirs significant economic hardship?
Correct. My heirs, 3 of them live out of state. None of them are involved in agriculture. I'm sure when my wife and I are gone, they'll sell it. And I would encourage them to sell it to 2 neighbors who have young sons who are interested in farming.
Okay, understood, and I can respect that. Sir, your testimony was so thorough with all of your attachments. I don't have any more specific questions of you.
Okay.
Thank you. Mr. Cummins, you're excused. Appreciate it.
Okay.
Mr. Jordy, we are planning on breaking for dinner at 5:30 and then coming back. So we've got 2 more on your list. Do you want to start one now?
We certainly could. I flip-flop the order. I'd like to go with Catherine Stockdale next, and that may or may not be lengthy, but we could